She thought their love was forever, 18 years together, 5 of them married. But nothing could have prepared her for the heartbreak that hit like a freight train. Her husband blindsided her with one of the most brutal betrayals, shattering everything they built. "Life doesn't scare me anymore," she later said, "because life already did its worst." Celebrity marriages often look picture-perfect, bathed in golden light, framed by red carpets and public adoration. But behind those glowing smiles and carefully curated photos often lie dark, painful truths. Secrets so heavy, they haunt entire households. In this video, we uncover the devastating stories of 23 Black celebrities whose marriages turned into nightmares. These icons, once the pride of their communities, chose partners who would ultimately betray them. From infidelity and emotional abuse to financial deception and violent manipulation, these unions didn't just fall apart, they exploded. By the end, you might find yourself wondering, how did people so full of love, so deserving of loyalty, end up with partners who brought them nothing but pain? Wendy Williams, the talk show queen trapped in a golden cage that slowly dragged her to the edge of madness. At her peak, Wendy wasn't just a daytime TV host. She was a force. Unfiltered, unafraid, and unapologetic, she built an empire by saying what others only dared whisper. The Wendy Williams Show was more than a program, it was a cultural lightning rod. But behind the lights, applause, and perfectly timed shade, lived a woman unraveling under the weight of a toxic love. In 1997, she married Kevin Hunter, a man she believed would protect her in an industry known to devour its own. Instead, he became her captor. What started as partnership turned into a prison. Kevin didn't support her, he controlled her. Her money, her calendar, her friendships, even her staff, all under his thumb. Wendy thought it was loyalty. In truth, it was psychological warfare stretched over decades. Then came 2008, the launch of her hit show, a career high. But off-screen, Kevin was living a lie. For over 10 years, he carried on a secret affair with Sharon Hudson. Wendy's money funded their fantasy. Penthouses, luxury cars, private spas, all behind her back. While the world watched Wendy shine, she cried herself to sleep, drowning in pills, alcohol, and bone-deep loneliness. By 2017, the truth began to leak. Paparazzi caught Kevin with Sharon more than once. But in 2019, the knife twisted deeper. He had fathered a child with his mistress. That broke her. Wendy collapsed. Hospitalized, mentally unstable, she was checked into rehab, barely clinging to the woman she once was. She tried to return to the screen, but the vibrant, quick-witted Wendy was gone. In her place, a fragile figure with swollen legs from lymphedema, shaky hands, slurred words, and vacant eyes. The world watched her deteriorate in real time. By 2020, the divorce was finalized. Kevin walked away with money, ownership, and years of Wendy's life she could never reclaim. She tried to rebuild, launched a podcast, dabbled in fashion, but behind the scenes she was being held together by others. By 2021, she vanished. Whispers swirled. Guardianship, memory loss, legal incapacity. Wendy no longer knew where she was or what was happening around her. This wasn't just a fall from fame, it was an erasure. A woman once so loud, so present, now silenced, alone, and lost in her own life. That marriage didn't just rob Wendy of her youth, it stole her voice, her spirit, and her very sense of self. Marvin Gaye. A gilded marriage, a shattered soul, and a death soaked in blood. He was the heartbeat of Motown, a voice that bared raw emotion with every note, delivering soul classics like What's Going On and Let's Get It On. But behind the velvet voice and slow-burning ballads was a man slowly breaking. Marvin Gaye wasn't just an icon. He was a prisoner of a marriage that stripped him of freedom, love, and, eventually, life. In 1963, Marvin married Anna Gordy Gaye, 17 years his senior and sister to Motown kingpin Berry Gordy. It was more than a union. It was a deal. A binding contract between a rising artist and a powerful gatekeeper. From that moment on, Marvin belonged to Anna. She controlled his finances, his appearance, his associations, even his creative direction. What began as passion became a cold, calculated cage lined with betrayal. As the years passed, their love decayed. Both turned to affairs, using outsiders as weapons in a cruel emotional chess game. Marvin looked for comfort in other women. Anna retaliated with younger lovers, sometimes parading them in front of him. To the world, they were Motown royalty. But in private, they lived in a war zone, one without love, without peace, without escape. By 1972, the damage turned financial. Anna's reckless spending buried Marvin in debt. Desperate and unraveling, he sank into drugs, panic attacks, hallucinations, paranoia. And Anna? She didn't help. She dragged him to court, seizing what was left. Their 1977 divorce wasn't closure. It was combustion. Marvin was forced to surrender nearly every dollar of his next album's profits. That album became Here, My Dear. Not a love letter, but a furious, soulful cry of betrayal. But the fall didn't stop there. Even free from Anna, Marvin was haunted. Addiction, depression, and guilt consumed him. He fled the US, becoming a ghost, paranoid, broke, and broken. Then in 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, he was shot dead by his own father during a heated argument. A father who had abused him for years. A father whose hatred echoed the pain Marvin had never escaped. Anna didn't attend his funeral. What was supposed to be a marriage that launched greatness became the trapdoor that swallowed a legend. Marvin Gaye died with a voice the world still reveres, but a heart no one truly healed. Latoya Jackson, trapped in a marriage made of hell. Overshadowed by the colossal fame of Michael and Janet, Latoya Jackson still carved out her own place in the spotlight. A successful solo artist, the first Jackson to pose for Playboy, and a bold figure who exuded sensuality and strength. But behind the glitter and stage lights was a woman silently drowning in darkness. In 1989, Latoya married Jack Gordon, a man with a polished smile and a predator's intent. The wedding was held in secret in Las Vegas. No Jacksons were invited. From that day forward, her life became an invisible prison. Jack wasn't just her husband, he became her captor. He cut her off from family, changed her phone numbers, and took over her career, her money, her voice. He made every decision, while she slowly disappeared behind the mask of his control. But his abuse didn't stop at isolation. Jack forced her into posing nude, signing degrading performance contracts, and even making disturbing public claims against her own family, all part of his twisted plan to destroy her reputation and spirit. When she resisted, he turned violent. He beat her, locked her in closets, tied her with phone cords, even waved guns in her face. Once, in a Milan hotel, he starved her for 3 days just to prove he could. To the public, she seemed strange, eccentric. But the truth was far more tragic. Latoya was a hostage. She was forced to perform for mercenaries during the Bosnian War and nearly lost her life, all because Jack needed cash. She tried to escape once, only to be dragged back and beaten so badly she ended up hospitalized. It wasn't until 1997, thanks to her brother Randy, that she finally broke free. A real-life jailbreak. After the divorce, she collapsed under the weight of PTSD, depression, and bankruptcy. Even her family kept their distance. But she refused to stay down. Latoya rebuilt herself. She told her story in books, appeared on television, and slowly reclaimed her life. No longer a victim, she emerged a survivor, a living symbol of what it means to rise from the ashes of a marriage that felt like hell. Ayan Leanzant, from battered bride to beacon of hope. Hers is not just a story of survival, but a resurrection. Ayan Leanzant rose from the ashes of a life torn apart by abuse, addiction, and abandonment to become one of America's most powerful voices for healing. Long before Fix My Life made her a household name, she was a penniless single mother with no degree, no safety net, and no light at the end of the tunnel, just sheer will. In 1971, at only 18, she married a man she believed would offer stability. Instead, he became her nightmare. Y, as she calls him, turned their home into a prison. Jobless, addicted to drugs and alcohol, and violent beyond words, he unleashed his rage on her body and soul. The bruises faded, the scars didn't. She lost her first child to one of his beatings. And still, she stayed, trapped by fear, by threats, and by the deep-rooted belief that this suffering was somehow what she deserved. From 1973 to 1976, Ayan lived in constant terror, juggling motherhood, empty cupboards, unpaid bills, and the looming threat of a man who promised to kill her and their children if she ever left. Some nights, her babies burned with fever and she had nothing. No medicine, no help, just tears and silent prayers. Then came 1979. Y was arrested for disorderly conduct, and Ayan seized her moment. With nothing but her children and her determination, she ran. No money, no formal education, but an iron will. Throughout the 80s, she clawed her way through life, washing dishes, typing papers, anything to survive. And when the weight of it all nearly crushed her, she turned to the page. I wrote, she later said, to live, to breathe, to stay sane. And from those tear-stained pages, a legend was born. Ayan didn't just escape. She rose. She turned her trauma into testimony, her pain into purpose. And with every show, every book, every soul she helped heal, she echoed the same truth. I survived. And so can you. Star Jones, a lavish wedding, a love that cost her everything but her strength. She was a force, lawyer, activist, and co-host of The View, a woman whose voice once made America stop and listen. But at the peak of her power, Star Jones made one choice that nearly cost her reputation, her fortune, and her dignity. She married a man who never truly loved her, only the lifestyle she provided. In 2004, the nation watched in awe as Star said, "I do," to Al Reynolds. The wedding was a spectacle, designer gown, A-list guests, luxury dripping from every detail, all televised for the world to see. But behind the glitz, a quiet tragedy was already brewing. Al had no real job, no vision, just one mission: live large on Star's dime. The luxury cars, the lavish trips, the designer labels, all charged to her success. As the money flowed, so did the whispers. Friends, colleagues, even her assistant warned her, Al was unfaithful. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly, with industry flings, party hookups, and reckless indiscretions that mocked the vows he'd made. Star never spoke publicly, but her body told the story: rapid weight loss, sleepless nights, and panic attacks hidden behind a perfect on-air smile. By 2008, it was over. The divorce hit hard. Though Star had funded every inch of their life together, she paid him a massive settlement. He walked away with cash, a house, and a fame he never earned, riding the name she built. She was left stripped bare, emotionally and financially. But she didn't crumble. Star Jones rose. She turned the pain into power, the silence into speeches, the shame into survival. No more fairy tale weddings or public romances. Just a woman, reborn, who learned the hardest truth. Not everyone who marries you loves you. And not every fall means you stay down. Vivica Fox. From star power to survival. A love that nearly broke her. Vivica Fox, a force in Hollywood, dazzled audiences with her fierce performances and unforgettable presence. Her iconic role in Kill Bill cemented her status as a powerhouse, bold, beautiful, and undeniably talented. But behind the red carpets and applause was a heartbreak that nearly derailed it all. In 1998, Vivica married Christopher Harvest, a charming singer with striking looks, but little else. From the outside, they were a glamorous match. But soon after the wedding, the illusion shattered. Vivica believed love could elevate, inspire, heal. Christopher saw something else, a personal ATM. He didn't work. He didn't chase music. He didn't support her. Instead, he drained her dry, lavishing himself with Rolexes, designer clothes, and first-class vacations on her dime. Month after month, she faced staggering bills for a lifestyle he did nothing to earn. And when she tried to talk to him, she got rage, resentment, and blame for her success. "I felt like a milk cow," she later admitted. Drained, used, invisible. By 2002, the love was gone, replaced by betrayal and emotional exhaustion. They divorced, but the damage lingered. Christopher, who had given nothing, demanded alimony. Vivica, worn down and desperate for peace, paid him just to close the chapter. Left alone in a house full of bills, she had no money, no husband, and no faith in love. But Vivica didn't fold. She rose. In 2003, Kill Bill became her rebirth. Every punch, every glare, every scream on screen channeled the fury of a woman reclaiming her life. It wasn't just acting, it was a reckoning. Vivica paid off her debts. She rebuilt her brand. She stood taller than ever. But her heart? Changed forever. Love no longer came easily. Trust had a price. She had learned the hard way. Never let someone exploit your heart or your hard-earned crown. Vivica Fox doesn't live to be anyone's wife. She lives for herself. Fierce. Independent. Unshakable. Tina Turner, escaping love's hell, rising from the ashes. She wasn't just a star. She was a storm, fierce, unforgettable, and unbreakable. Tina Turner, the queen who redefined rock and soul, stood not only as a music legend but as a symbol of survival. Behind her electrifying stage presence was a woman who had clawed her way out of a nightmare few could imagine. When Tina met Ike Turner in 1962, she thought she'd found her soulmate, a partner to conquer the music world with. But what she walked into wasn't a love story. It was a prison. Ike wasn't a husband. He was a tyrant fueled by drugs, rage, and a need for control. He ruled every dollar she earned, every move she made. Tina wasn't a wife, she was property. The glamour masked the bruises. Behind the spotlight were beatings, silence, and suffering. She sang for the world while crying in private. Ike's fists weren't the only weapon. His manipulations stripped away her will, piece by piece. At her lowest, Tina attempted to end the pain with a bottle of sleeping pills. But she woke up in a hospital, and with that awakening came a choice: to live. She ran. No money, no house, no rights to the music she helped build, just her name and a mountain of Ike's debt on her back. But Tina refused to break. She rose again, this time alone and unstoppable. In 1984, What's Love Got to Do with It wasn't just a chart topper. It was her anthem. A woman reborn from ashes, singing her truth. Ike tried to threaten her, but she never looked back. Every note she sang, every stage she owned was a declaration: I survived. She became not just a legend, but an immortal force. Her success wasn't just fame, it was redemption. And when his name came up in interviews, her voice would cool, not from hatred, but from something deeper. Because no one escapes hell without scars. And Tina Turner carried hers with grace, turning pain into power and silence into song. Gary Coleman, A Violent Marriage and a Chilling End. Once the beloved face of childhood innocence as Arnold Jackson on Different Strokes, Gary Coleman captured hearts in the 1980s with his charm and quick wit. But behind the fame was a life marked by betrayal, loneliness, and a final chapter that felt more like a slow unraveling than a peaceful farewell. In 2007, Gary married Shannon Price, hoping, perhaps, that love could finally offer him the stability that fame, fortune, and even family had denied. But the union that promised sanctuary quickly turned toxic. Within months, the woman he called his partner revealed a violent temper and a capacity for cruelty that Gary hadn't seen coming. In 2008, during a heated argument, Shannon struck Gary, physically and emotionally breaking the trust he had so desperately clung to. But the most chilling moment came not with fists, but with silence. After Gary fell down a flight of stairs, injured and vulnerable, Shannon didn't rush to help. She walked away. Whether it was neglect or something darker, no one could say. But her cold detachment in those critical moments left the world shaken. By 2010, Gary suffered a fatal stroke. He passed away with more questions than closure. The man who once lit up television screens died under the shadow of suspicion and emotional neglect. In the aftermath, the public turned on Shannon. Accusations flew. Was she a careless spouse or something worse? The courts ultimately denied her claim to his estate, launching a bitter legal war that exposed even deeper fractures in their short, troubled marriage. Shannon Price faded from the spotlight, but not from memory. Her name remains tethered to Gary's tragic end, a haunting reminder of how even the brightest stars can be extinguished, not by time, but by those closest to them. Whitney Houston, the painful secret behind a marriage that shattered a legend. She was America's sweetheart, a once-in-a-generation voice, an icon whose songs could bring you to your knees. But behind the spotlight, Whitney Houston was drowning in a love story that slowly destroyed her. When she married Bobby Brown in 1992, the world saw a fairy tale. In truth, it was the beginning of a nightmare that would silence the voice of a generation. Their union started with glamour and dreams, but quickly turned into chaos. Bobby wasn't the man she thought. He was volatile, possessive, and driven by demons of his own. His jealousy turned violent. In one horrifying moment, he shoved Whitney while she was pregnant with their daughter, Bobby Christina, nearly causing a miscarriage. That incident was just the beginning of years filled with emotional and physical abuse, drug binges, and public meltdowns. The queen who once lit up arenas now staggered through life with vacant eyes and a trembling voice. The awards stopped. The contracts dried up. The Whitney we knew, the radiant star, faded into a woman barely holding on. Rehab became a revolving door. And still, she couldn't walk away. Her family begged. The world watched. But love had become a prison, and she was its most famous inmate. Photographs told the truth she couldn't speak. Whitney, disheveled on the streets, whispering to no one, lost in a haze of addiction and heartbreak. Even after they divorced in 2007, the damage was done. She lost custody of Bobby Christina. Her career barely survived. And her spirit never truly recovered. She tried to rise again. New music, new appearances, glimmers of the old Whitney, but the scars ran too deep. On February 11, 2012, she was found alone in a Beverly Hills bathtub. Gone. A voice silenced not just by drugs, but by years of pain that began the moment love turned toxic. Whitney Houston's death wasn't just the loss of an icon. It was the tragic end of a woman who gave everything to love, except the love she needed most, the love of herself. Mary J. Blige, from fairy tale to financial ruin. The queen of hip-hop soul. A voice that could shake the heavens and heal the broken. But behind Mary J. Blige's legendary vocals was a private agony few knew. A love story turned nightmare that nearly destroyed her. When she married Kendu Isaacs in 2003, she believed she was finally stepping into peace after a lifetime of storms. He wasn't a celebrity, just a quiet figure behind the scenes. A man she thought she could trust. But mixing love with business proved to be a deadly cocktail. Slowly, the man she married became a stranger, not just emotionally, but financially dangerous. By 2011, the mask slipped. Kendu was burning through Mary's fortune, showering luxury on a rising singer he was secretly involved with. Private jets, designer clothes, $400,000 on personal pee, not for Mary, but for his mistress. The betrayal cut deeper than any lyric she'd ever written. In 2016, after 13 years of heartache, Mary filed for divorce. But freedom came with a brutal price. Kendu demanded $129,000 a month in spousal support, claiming he was used to the life she gave him. The courts eventually settled on $30,000 a month. And while he walked away cushioned in her success, Mary was left drained, emotionally, financially, spiritually. She lost homes. She lost gigs. She nearly lost herself. In silence, she shaved her head, shedding not just her hair, but the remnants of a love that became poison. But Mary didn't stay down. She rose, scarred but unbroken, turning her pain into raw, unforgettable music. In a rare interview, she said, "I thought I would die for that man." But instead, Mary J. Blige lived and came back stronger. Not ashamed of loving the wrong person, but proud of surviving it. Halib Berry, pain beneath the glamour. 2 marriages. 2 devastating betrayals. To the world, Halib Berry was perfection. An Oscar-winning beauty, a fierce talent, a Hollywood icon with a career most only dream of. But behind the red carpets and golden statues hid a woman quietly bleeding. In 1993, she married baseball star David Justice. On the outside, they were a picture-perfect power couple. But behind closed doors, Hallie endured a nightmare. She was slapped so hard she nearly lost her hearing. Bruised and broken, she would hide in corners of their home, whispering prayers into the silence, hoping the violence would stop. But she told no one. Speaking out might have cost her everything: her image, her career, her pride. When the marriage ended in 1997, there were no public accusations. Just a woman walking away in pieces. She later admitted she stood on a balcony, contemplating the end. But something deep inside, a flicker of survival, pulled her back from the edge. Then came Eric Benet in 2001, the soulful R&B singer who seemed to offer everything she longed for: adoration, tenderness, understanding. For a moment, she believed in love again. But that dream crumbled too. Late-night texts, whispers of infidelity. Eric confessed, sex addiction, multiple affairs. Another betrayal. Hallie fought to save the marriage. Sent him to rehab. Tried to forgive. But every relapse shattered her a little more. When he demanded part of her fortune during the divorce, the emotional knife twisted even deeper. She went on to win an Oscar for Monsters Ball, but behind that historic moment, her eyes told another story. She had survived, but not unscarred. Therapy helped her find footing again, but the pain didn't vanish. Later relationships, too, fell under the shadow of her past. She stopped believing in fairy tales, in soulmates, in perfect endings. But somewhere in the wreckage, Hallie discovered something far more powerful: that love doesn't come from someone else, it comes from within. She stopped searching for a savior, and instead, saved herself. Tisha Campbell, a marriage shattered by debt and betrayal. In the 90s, Tisha Campbell was television royalty, a radiant star and fan favorite. And by her side was actor Dwayne Martin, her seemingly perfect match. To the world, they looked like Black Hollywood's power couple. But behind the red carpets and camera flashes was a slow-burning tragedy no one saw coming. Dwayne didn't just betray Tisha's heart, he sabotaged her future. While she worked tirelessly to keep their family afloat, he was funneling money into shady ventures, blowing millions on phantom projects. In 2016, the truth surfaced: over $15 million gone. Vanished. And the weight of the fallout crashed squarely onto Tisha's shoulders. She covered the bills, paid for their children's schooling, and took roles, not for fame, but for survival. All while Dwayne lived in luxury, untouched by her struggle. What she lost wasn't just money, it was trust, love, and years of belief in a marriage that had quietly become a prison. After 24 painful years, she filed for divorce in 2020. The custody battle that followed was vicious. Dwayne dragged her name through the mud, weaponizing every tactic to break her spirit. But he didn't realize, Tisha had already cried all her tears. Now, she stood unshaken. With grace and grit, Tisha began rebuilding. Not with fanfare, but with steady strength, taking small roles, finding joy in simple victories. Her comeback wasn't loud. It was luminous. Because even after betrayal, bankruptcy, and heartbreak, Tisha Campbell rose. And this time, she was rising alone, but finally free. Lisa Wu. A marriage wrapped in luxury, hiding wounds no camera could capture. She stepped into the spotlight with elegance. Model, actress, and reality TV star, embracing the glamour of Hollywood and the promise of love. In 1992, she married R&B sensation Keith Sweat, and for a moment, it looked like a fairy tale. But behind the red carpets and diamond smiles, Lisa's life was quietly unraveling. What began as romance soon turned into control. Keith's charm gave way to a darker side: rage, manipulation, and repeated betrayals. Lisa discovered the affairs, endured the arguments, but in a world that protected fame, her pain was muted. When the marriage finally cracked wide open, it wasn't just love that was lost. In 1999, during a bitter custody battle, Keith's influence helped paint Lisa as the villain. He walked away with their children. She walked away with nothing. No assets, no support, no justice. By 2002, the divorce was final, and Lisa was left to rebuild from the rubble. Depression followed. So did grief. But surrender never did. Lisa rose again, not quietly but boldly, through the lens of the Real Housewives of Atlanta, refusing to hide her truth. She didn't ask for pity. She shared her story, not as a victim, but as a survivor. She built a furniture brand. She published books. She fought for her children. She reclaimed her power on her own terms. Lisa Wu didn't need a rescue. She became her own revolution. Omarosa Manigault Newman. A marriage built on lies, and a war between ambition and betrayal. She was bold, brilliant, and on the rise. Omarosa Manigault Newman, a woman who mastered both politics and reality TV. But behind her sharp ambition was a heart that craved something steady. In 2000, she thought she found it with Aaron Stallworth. Their marriage began with promise, but quickly unraveled into a nightmare she never saw coming. Aaron wasn't a partner, he was a parasite. Using her rising fame, he borrowed recklessly, racked up debts, and betrayed her behind closed doors. When the truth exploded in 2002, it wasn't just heartbreak, it was financial devastation. He had secretly mortgaged their home to fund a failed tech scheme, leaving Omarosa to face the wreckage alone. By 2005, the marriage was over, but the damage lingered like smoke in a burned-out room. Even as she tried to rebuild, Aaron's shadow followed. With every public appearance came leaked messages, old photos, and fresh gossip aimed at tearing her down. But Omarosa refused to break. She stormed back into the spotlight on The Apprentice, commanding attention as a woman who didn't flinch, didn't fold. Her return to politics, even into the halls of the White House, proved that her story wasn't over. It was just evolving. In 2017, she married again. And while whispers from the past tried to claw at her new life, Omarosa stood tall. Controversial? Misunderstood? Often. But defeated? Never. Her journey is more than just scandal and survival. It's a testament to resilience, reinvention, and the will of a woman who refused to be anyone's victim. Vivica Foster, the woman who lost everything for loving the wrong star. She was more than just Usher's wife. Vivica Foster was a respected stylist, ambitious, driven, and unafraid to stand tall in a world that rarely showed her grace. But the moment she said, "I do," to R&B sensation Usher Raymond in 2007, the public turned on her. Critics mocked her, tabloids tore her apart, and whispers followed her everywhere. Still, she held on to hope that love could outshine the noise. But by 2008, the fairy tale unraveled. Rumors of Usher's cheating exploded, and what was once a marriage turned into a quiet, painful battlefield, not just between husband and wife, but between Vivica and his family. Usher's own mother refused to attend the wedding. And slowly, Vivica found herself erased, from his inner circle, from their shared dreams, even from her own life. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. Behind closed doors, Usher's extravagant lifestyle spiraled out of control. Yet when the bills came due, fingers pointed at her. Vivica was painted as reckless, when in truth, she had no idea much of their fortune was being spent on his indulgences. Then came the divorce. 2009, and with it, an ugly, high-stakes custody battle. Usher presented himself as the perfect father. Vivica? She was vilified, called unfit, cold, unstable. She didn't just lose custody. She lost her reputation, her peace, her voice in the eyes of the world. But she refused to stay broken. Vivica picked herself up, wrote books, returned to fashion, and became an advocate for single mothers fighting similar battles. She didn't win in court, but she won something greater, the courage to reclaim her story. Because in the end, her survival wasn't about getting everything back. It was about refusing to stay silent in a world that tried to silence her. Jesse Jackson Jr., a prince who lost his way. He was born into legacy. The son of civil rights icon Jesse Jackson, Jr. carried the weight of hope on his shoulders, a rising black politician poised to reshape American politics. At his side stood his wife, Sandy Jackson, a brilliant attorney with ambition to match his own. Together, they looked unstoppable, polished, powerful, a modern-day political dynasty in the making. But behind closed doors, their kingdom was crumbling. Their marriage, once a symbol of black excellence and unity, slowly unraveled. Jesse entered Congress with promise. Sandy carved out her own empire. But instead of unity, competition and resentment festered. She eclipsed him in ambition, in control, until Jesse became a passenger in his own life. Then came the reckoning. Lavish spending, designer watches, luxury getaways, and untraceable indulgences, funded by over $800,000 in campaign money. Jesse knew. He stayed silent. And that silence cost them everything. In 2013, the fall came fast. Both were charged with conspiracy and fraud. He was sentenced to 30 months. Sandy to 12. The power couple who once inspired millions now wore prison numbers. When Jesse was released, the damage was beyond repair. Their marriage fractured, and by 2018, divorce followed. The bright future he was born into had faded into regret and scandal. Today, Jesse Jackson Jr. lives far from the halls of power, his voice quieter, his light dimmer. He could have changed the world. Instead, betrayal, pride, and silence changed him. Ensa Cosby, the death born from wounds that never healed. Ensa Cosby spent her life trying to step out of her father's immense shadow, chasing peace in a world that never gave her one. In the early 90s, she married Martin Scott, believing she was building a future of her own. But that bright beginning quickly dimmed. Their marriage buckled under the strain of private turmoil and public scandal, some her father's, others her own. While the world scrutinized the Cosby name, Ensa endured not only the weight of that legacy but the quiet heartbreak of betrayal. Martin didn't just cheat, he disappeared emotionally, retreating from their home and leaving Ensa to face the chaos alone. Fame's toxic glare and love's slow erosion drove her to the edge. When they finally divorced in 2000, it wasn't a fresh start. It was the beginning of bitter custody battles, sleepless nights, and scars no court could heal. After the split, Ensa faded from the spotlight. She lived quietly, but not peacefully. Behind closed doors, she struggled with kidney disease, and with the ghosts of everything she'd lost. The pain of abandonment, the shame of headlines, the burden of being a Cosby. In 2018, at just 44 years old, Ensa passed away. But many believe her soul had started slipping away long before her body followed. Some wounds cut so deep, the world may not see them, but they bleed a person dry just the same. Evelyn Lazada. A 41-day marriage and a brutal wake-up call. In 2012, reality star and model Evelyn Lazada seemed to be living a fairy tale. She had just married NFL wide receiver Chad Johnson, and the world watched as they smiled for cameras and shared dreams of forever. But that dream shattered in just 41 days. One violent moment changed everything. During an argument, Chad slammed his head into Evelyn's, leaving her bloodied and broken, not just physically, but emotionally. The woman who once glowed with love was now forced into survival mode. Her private trauma became public spectacle. Chad was arrested. His football career imploded. And Evelyn was thrust into a legal and emotional nightmare, all under the glare of flashing cameras and cruel headlines. She became the face of domestic violence overnight, but not with sympathy. She endured online mockery, public judgment, and whispers questioning her truth. The bruises faded, but the scars stayed. She sought therapy, tried to reclaim her peace, but the emotional weight and relentless rumors followed her every step. Behind the glamour and fame was a woman trying to piece together a life torn apart in under 6 weeks. Her story isn't just about a marriage that ended. It's about surviving a moment that could have ended her. Kiki Wyatt. A brutal marriage and the fight of her life. When powerhouse vocalist Kiki Wyatt married her road manager Ramat Morton in 2000, she believed she was stepping into a dream. But what began as a promise of love quickly turned into a waking nightmare. Behind closed doors, the man who was supposed to protect her became her tormentor, hurling cruel words, landing vicious blows, and turning their home into a prison of fear. By 2006, the abuse escalated to something unforgivable. During one violent episode, Ramat's rage caused Kiki to suffer a heartbreaking miscarriage. Trapped in pain and silence, she lived day to day under the shadow of his threats. Until one night, pushed to the edge, Kiki fought back, defending herself with a knife not out of hate, but out of desperation to survive. That moment changed everything. It wasn't just about escaping a man, it was about reclaiming her life. The marriage officially ended in 2009, but the emotional wounds lingered. Kiki was left to battle PTSD, raise her children alone, and rebuild herself from the wreckage. And yet, through every trial, she never lost her voice, on stage or in life. Kiki Wyatt didn't just survive, she stood tall, kept singing, and proved that even the deepest scars can't silence a soul determined to heal. Hers is a story of pain, resilience, and the kind of strength only born from surviving the storm. Angie Stone. A silent battle behind the music. Angie Stone, soulful, stylish, and a voice that could melt pain into poetry. She rose to fame with hits that touched hearts, but behind her velvet vocals hid a haunting truth. In 1992, she married Rodney Stone, hoping to find peace and partnership. Instead, she stepped into a living nightmare. Within months, Rodney's charm turned cruel. The abuse wasn't just physical, it was psychological, a slow, deliberate erasure of her freedom, her art, and her dreams. He ruled every part of her life, while his addiction and growing debts pushed her deeper into despair. Her music faded. Her light dimmed. One stormy night, Angie made a choice, her life or his control. She fled barefoot through the rain, cradling her newborn son in one arm and a diaper bag in the other. By 1995, the marriage was over, but the wounds ran deep. Penniless, broken, but unyielding, Angie fought to rebuild her world. She poured her pain into her songs, each note a cry, a confession, a step toward healing. Through it all, she survived. Not just as a mother, not just as a musician, but as a woman who refused to let abuse write her final verse. Robin Givens, A Whirlwind Marriage to Mike Tyson and the Painful Price of Fame. In the late 80s, Robin Givens was Hollywood royalty, a rising star who seemed to have it all. When she married heavyweight boxing champion Mike Tyson, the world saw a glamorous power couple. But behind the red carpet smiles was a relationship unraveling at breakneck speed. What began as a fairy tale turned into a nightmare within months. Their marriage lasted barely a year, but its damage echoed for decades. Fights erupted behind closed doors, loud, violent, and constant. Then came the infamous 1988 TV interview where Robin, sitting beside a silent Tyson, accused him of domestic abuse. The world was stunned. Overnight, Tyson went from boxing legend to public villain. But the drama didn't end there. Robin was painted as a gold digger, accused of draining Tyson's millions. The media frenzy turned toxic. By 1989, their divorce was finalized, but the scars ran deeper. Tyson's career spiraled into addiction, arrests, and a prison sentence that nearly destroyed him. And Robin, though she continued acting, could never quite outrun the shadow of that doomed union. It was a marriage built on fame and fractured by violence, distrust, and heartbreak. In the end, both paid a heavy price, not just in headlines, but in years of healing from a love that may have never truly existed. Emmanuel Ebu, from Premier League glory to homeless despair. He once dazzled crowds in packed stadiums, wearing Arsenal's red with pride. Emmanuel Ebu was a football star with the world at his feet. But behind the fame was a man who placed his heart and his fortune into the hands of one woman. His wife, Aaliyah. What began as a picture-perfect love story slowly unraveled into a devastating downfall. After a decade of marriage, the dream collapsed. In 2017, a bitter divorce shattered his life. Aaliyah was awarded everything: the homes, the cars, and custody of their children. Emmanuel was left with nothing. No roof, no money, just memories of a career once celebrated, now reduced to pain. From luxury to loneliness, he found himself couchsurfing, drowning in debt, and taking odd jobs just to survive. He later accused Aaliyah of deceit and financial betrayal, but the damage was done. The tabloids mocked. The public judged. But no one saw the broken man behind the headlines. For a man who once stood at the peak of football greatness, Emmanuel Ebu's fall was more than a tragedy, it was a warning. Even the brightest stars can lose everything, not on the field, but in the silent battles of love, trust, and betrayal. Aaliyah, an illegal marriage and wounds that never healed. She was the princess of R&B, talented, radiant, unstoppable. Aaliyah lit up the world with her voice and presence, becoming a global icon before she was even old enough to vote. But beneath the surface of fame was a devastating secret, a love story rooted not in romance, but in control and manipulation. In 1994, at just 15, Aaliyah was pulled into an illegal marriage with R. Kelly, a powerful figure in the music industry. It wasn't love. It was power disguised as protection. Aaliyah became a pawn in his twisted game, a teenager trapped in a web of secrecy, fear, and emotional damage that no annulment could erase. Though the marriage was officially dissolved in 1995, the psychological scars lingered. Kelly had not only stolen her innocence, he'd taken control of her voice, her image, her life. And yet, Aaliyah rose. She fought to reclaim her name, her music, and her light. But the shadows never fully faded. 6 years later, in 2001, a plane crash ended her life at just 22, at the peak of her stardom. The world mourned. She was gone, but the pain she carried outlived her. R. Kelly went on with his career, but the truth eventually caught up. In 2021, he was convicted. Justice, perhaps. But no verdict could undo what Aaliyah endured or bring back the girl whose trust was shattered too young. Fame may bring applause, but it doesn't protect from trauma. Behind the red carpets and flashing lights, many carry wounds the world never sees. What do you think of Aaliyah's untold story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more powerful stories from the world of fame, heartbreak, and resilience.